I didn't realize the night my life tilted off its axis was a Tuesday until I went back through my calendar and saw the color coding: blue for work, yellow for gym, green for Lily. There was a slim green bar from 6,000 to 9,000 p.m. that read, Girls Dinner, Low High, with a little cocktail emoji she added herself when she plugged it into our shared schedule. I cooked chicken piccata and set aside a plate for when she got back. The lemon slices looked too cheerful for how I felt. She came home smelling like a candle store, kissed me too lightly on the cheek, and said she was exhausted. We went to bed with the window cracked open and the city humming 3 floors below. She turned her phone face down on the nightstand. That was the first time I noticed it. If you'd asked me then, I would have told you Lily was the best thing that ever happened to me. We've been together almost 3 years, engaged for 8 months, living in my place for the past year. I'm 36, a product manager at a mid-sized software company in Denver. She's 30, an event coordinator who freelanced for a few boutique agencies and one big nonprofit that threw gala fundraisers where people wore rented tuxes and posted about community impact. I make lists for a living, so of course I made lists about her, bright but scattered, sweet but slippery with details, the kind of person who texts you 5 photos of a sunrise because she's sure you weren't going to see it otherwise. She cried at animal shelter commercials. She'd blast Fleetwood Mac when she cleaned. She left half-drunk seltzers in every room like breadcrumbs. I guess I should admit that I loved how other people looked at us. We looked like a couple you'd see on a company blog about work-life balance, hike on Saturdays, meal prep on Sundays, argument about how to fold fitted sheets that ends in laughter and bad sex on the laundry room floor. We had a Pinterest board for a wedding we hadn't paid anyone to plan yet. We had a list of baby names in my notes app that we pretended was a joke, but wasn't. The red flags didn't show up all at once. They rose and fell like sneaky little tides. Her girls' dinners multiplied, which wasn't weird considering her job, except there were too many nights where she came home with the same story. We lost track of time, and my phone died, and I didn't want to wake you. She started locking her phone with a 6-digit code after 3 years of not caring if I used it to queue up Spotify. She began keeping a tote bag in the trunk with gym clothes, even though she never liked the gym. She smelled different sometimes, expensive colognes rubbing off when she hugged donors, she said. It would have been easier to ignore if not for the missed receipts. I manage our budget in a little spreadsheet that has a smug way of catching when things don't line up. Dinner charges at neighborhoods she never went to. Ubers at 1:11 a.m. that didn't correspond to girls' dinners. Venmo descriptions that were too cute for pizza, and you saved us. And a single fox emoji I couldn't decipher at all. I didn't do anything at first because there wasn't anything to do. You can't point to a fox emoji and say, see, that's cheating. You sound unhinged. You sound like someone who will drive themselves insane looking for what they already know. The way I found out was stupid. Not cinematic or karmic, just tech-brained and accidental. The way most secrets spill now. I'd set up a Synology NAS in our hall closet because I like having our photos backed up and because I wanted an excuse to buy another gadget. When you set up photo backup across devices, you check boxes. I checked them for everything on our Wi-Fi, my phone, my laptop, the iPad we mostly use for recipes, and apparently Lily's MacBook Air when it was open and on the counter and I was in the kitchen installing an update. The thing about automation is that it respects your choices without asking if you meant them. Her photos library started trickling into a folder labeled Lily Photos Uploads. It was background noise until it wasn't. It was a Wednesday. She'd left for a walkthrough at the museum and I was in a meeting that could have been an email. I minimized Zoom and opened the NAS dashboard to watch CPU spikes like a lunatic. New thumbnails bloomed, Lily at a brunch with 3 glittery mimosas, Lily's toes at a nail salon, a sunset over Sloane's Lake, then a screenshot of her messages app. The screenshot was a slab of gray and blue bubbles with the timestamp cut off. The name at the top read N, no last name, just an initial, and a photo of a rooftop cocktail she'd probably stolen from Yelp. I clicked, expanded, read. N. Tonight got me thinking. That speech you made about not wanting to die in the same zip code, you were dead serious, weren't you? Lily, I'm serious about not shrinking to fit someone else's plan. N. I can't promise anything sane, I can promise big. Lily, you always do. That was all it took to make my heart learn a new rhythm. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it was a warm barrel. I scrolled. There were more screenshots because that's what we do when we're proud or guilty, we archive our own damn evidence. There was a photo of a bathroom mirror in a stupidly fancy restaurant and Lily's dress in the corner. There was a selfie of a man's forearm resting against a marble bar, a heavy watch face winking from a cuff. There were little videos of a city from a high balcony that wasn't ours. I should have closed my laptop and gone for a run. I should have called a friend. Instead, I went hunting. The next screenshot was from Instagram DMs, a guy whose username was something like Gabe Erlinek. Gabe sent a story reply of her in a silver dress with fire emojis. She had marked it Close Friends, the little green circle. He had the kind of face that only exists in cities with doormen. The message bubble said, you looked dangerous last night. She'd responded with a gif of a cartoon fox peeking from behind a tree. Fox emoji. I closed my eyes, sucked a breath like a man bracing for a dive, and kept scrolling. I found a third conversation, this one in WhatsApp, with a name saved as R. His avatar was a dog, which felt almost insulting, as if he tried to disguise himself as goodwill. I skimmed. The number came from a Chicago area code. The tone was different. Fewer compliments, more logistics, flights, hotel confirmations, the usual place, a photo of a keycard sleeve with the logo of a hotel in Lodo where Lily had claimed to be running a coat check for a donor event. I clicked the original photo on the NAS to see the metadata I always make fun of people for not understanding. It had been taken from the same phone as the brunch selfies. The location tag put it 2 blocks from the hotel at 1008 a.m. It kept going until my stomach was concrete. There were 4 men whose conversations were recent enough to matter. In was Noah, or Nico, or Nick. Later, I'd confirm he was Noah Lockhart, the 38-year-old founder of a construction tech startup who donated big to the nonprofit Lily worked for. Gabe was exactly that. Gabriel from New York, a brand consultant who flew in monthly for a client and posted photos where he never smiled with his eyes. R was Rory, a touring sound engineer who came through Denver with bands I'd heard of and who had a dog named Mabel, hence the avatar. The fourth was hidden under a generic name, Taylor M. And for a second I thought, how many Taylors do we know? Then I finally scrolled far enough and saw a selfie of a face I recognized from our building. Taylor lived 2 floors down and across the hall, a guy who borrowed our stepladder once and never brought it back. He had a girlfriend with a sharp bob who said hello in the elevator like it cost her extra. My world shrank to the size of our hallway. I didn't find one narrative, I found 4. With Noah, she was spellbound and ambitious. She wrote about feeling electric and how he made her think about scale. With Gabe, she was coy and cinematic. Their messages were screenshots of playlists and restaurant tables and a photo of his thumb on the inside of her wrist. With Rory, she was practical, making sure he got her discounts at the hotel and sending him set times so she could slide in and out of venues without being seen. With Taylor, she was reckless. She told him, "You're the only one who knows the real me," which made me want to laugh and throw up at the same time. The thing that welded all 4 together was a script. She cut and pasted pieces of herself that fit each man, stitched them into these different girls, the muse, the mystery, the ride or die, the neighbor who just gets it. I kept scrolling because I wanted to know which version of me she sold them. You don't do this to a stranger, you do this to a man you've rehearsed speeches about. When my meeting ended, I stood up too fast and nearly passed out. The apartment smelled like lemon cleaner. The bathroom fan whirred. A plant on the windowsill had finally grown one brave new leaf. I could hear the old couple on the other side of our living room wall watching a game show. It was all the same, except my life had split into an old story and a new one. I didn't text her, I didn't call anyone. I made coffee, I didn't drink, and sat at the dining table and did what I'm good at. I made a list. Secure copies of everything. Verify identities, figure out who else is being lied to. Decide what I want, revenge, safety, both. Don't tip my hand yet. I exported the screenshots, the voice notes, the photos of hotel key sleeves, the calendar invites, the Uber receipts where she and someone else got out on the same block at the same time on different nights. I zipped and backed them up twice. It felt like building a lifeboat while pretending the ship wasn't already taking on water. Verifying identities was easier than it should have been. Noah's last name was in his email signature in a forwarded ticket, the NAS slurped up. He had a public LinkedIn full of thought leader noise and a wife named Amelia who posted photos of 2 blonde kids and a golden retriever that looked like they lived inside a cereal commercial. Gabe had a brand site that made him sound like he invented fonts. He also had a girlfriend named Serena who tagged him in a 3-year anniversary post from a restaurant in Tribeca. Rory was trickier because his public-facing life was shows and wires and blackout curtains. But people who live on the road keep a digital trail for their mothers to see. I found a Facebook profile with a grandma in Iowa, then a girlfriend back home in Fort Collins whose profile picture was her and Mabel, the dog, wearing matching bandanas. Taylor, the neighbor, was a layup. His mail sometimes got misdelivered to us. His last name was on an envelope that I had placed carefully outside his door last month. Who else was being lied to? At least 3 women. 4, if you counted Amelia, the founder's wife, who might have made her peace with her husband's fame and its orbit, and decided the house and the kids and the vacations in Vail were worth not looking too closely. But I've sat across from men like Noah at fundraising dinners. They are never as careful as they think. They always assume the women around them won't compare notes. My anger crystallized into something cold and functional. The worst pain I'd ever felt was now a tool. I waited 2 days. It was the hardest discipline I've ever practiced. I moved through those days like a chess piece pretending to be a man. I made us dinner. I listened to Lily describe a luncheon where a city councilman mispronounced the donor's wife's name, and she reenacted how she'd saved the moment with a joke. I kissed her forehead when she leaned into me on the couch and fell asleep with her head on my shoulder, and when her phone buzzed and she flinched, I didn't look. I don't know if that was kindness or cowardice. Both, probably. The first person I contacted was Amelia. I told myself it was because she had kids and a mortgage and the most to lose, but the truth is, I wanted to hurt Noah in a way he couldn't smooth talk away. I also needed someone with an infrastructure, someone who would know what to do with the bomb and who had the means to shield herself and her children when it went off. I built an email from a burner address and sent it at 8:03 a.m. on a Friday because people open things before their day gets away from them. I was meticulous, subject line simple, factual, non-sensational, information you may need about Noah. I attached a PDF with timestamps, images, and short descriptions that read like a deposition. On March 12, 10:41 p.m., the attached Uber receipt shows Lily leaving hotel. 2 minutes after Noah's card was used at the bar, photo metadata confirms her presence. I did not editorialize. I did not call names. At the end, I wrote, I am engaged to Lily and discovered this when our photo backup synced. I'm not reaching out to you to ask anything except that you see what I saw. I understand you may ignore this. If you want to verify, we can speak on the phone. I won't contact you again unless you reach out. I signed it with an initial. I hit send and felt my heart slam against my ribs like it was trying to get out. 15 minutes later, the burner rang. I was in my car in the garage, doors closed, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly the leather creaked. I answered and heard a woman who wasn't crying but had recently stopped. Is this Ethan? She asked. She had my name somehow. Of course she did. People like Amelia figure out what they need to know before you do. It is. This is Amelia. You're Lily's fiancé. I am. You're sure about the dates? I made sure. Silence lived in the car like a second person. I knew about one, she said, voice flat. I didn't know about your Lily, and I didn't know it was still going on. I didn't either until Wednesday. I said, I'm sorry. I'm not calling because I need comfort, Ethan, she said. I'm calling because I need the originals. Every part of me unclenched at the competence in her voice. We spoke for 5 minutes like two junior executives pulling together a briefing. She gave me an attorney's name and a secure upload link. I gave her what she asked for. At the end, she said, I have children. I'm not going to make a scene, but I am going to end this. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For both of us. For what it's worth, I said, surprising myself. I believed in him, at least the version I saw on stage. And I believed in her. That's the worst part. No, she said gently. The worst part is that they believe we wouldn't compare notes. After Amelia, the others were easier. Serena in New York read my DM and wrote back one sentence, I knew it. Then, 20 minutes later, send what you have. I did. Her second message was less composed. He told me I was paranoid when I asked about the Denver trips. I wrote, you weren't. She wrote, thank you. Rory's girlfriend in Fort Collins didn't answer her Facebook messages but picked up when I called the number listed on a craft Etsy shop that sold dog bandanas. I know that sounds insane, I said, telling a stranger what her boyfriend did in hotel stairwells, but I have proof. She didn't cry. She said, I knew something was off. He always comes back smelling like hotel shampoo he swears he didn't use. Taylor was last because it required knocking on a door. I timed it for a Sunday afternoon when I heard their music through the hall. I knocked and the girlfriend opened it, hair in the sharp bob, expression practice neutral. Hi, I said. We're neighbors. I'm Ethan. We met in the elevator. Right, she said, head tilted, assessing if I was the kind of neighbor who complains about recyclables. This is gonna be weird, I said. Can I speak with you for 5 minutes? I wouldn't do this if it wasn't important. She held the door and glanced over her shoulder. A slice of their living room revealed Taylor at the kitchen island scrolling his phone, unaware. Taylor, she called. It's the ladder guy. He looked up, blinked, smiled like we were in a sitcom. Oh, hey man, I still have your... Yeah, I said. I don't care about the ladder. 5 minutes later, he wasn't smiling. His girlfriend's name was Erin. She stood with her arms folded, reading the printouts I brought because I knew the hallway. Wi-Fi is terrible. Taylor didn't sit. He hovered near the island like he could hide behind his own furniture. You're lying, he said, voice too loud. This is psycho. The timestamps matched the security logs for our building, I said, calm because I rehearsed. The nights you told Erin you were pulling doubles? Those were the nights Lily was at a tasting and her phone was on airplane mode. She was here. Erin's eyes were laser bright. How do you know? Because I live with her, I said, and the words lodged in my throat. And because our devices backed up, I'm sorry. Taylor looked at me like I'd pulled a con. So what, you're here to blow up my life because you're too boring to keep your girl? Erin held up a hand. Don't, eh? To me, thank you for telling me. To him, get out. You can't seriously. Out, she said. Right now. She handed me my stepladder on his way to the door. I took it because I'm petty and because it felt like reclaiming a territory I didn't know I'd lost. You should know I didn't feel triumphant. If this were a movie, there'd be a revenge montage where I upload the files and smirk and pour myself a whiskey to slow motion music. It wasn't like that. It was nauseating. Every time I sent a file or knocked on a door, I shook. There is nothing satisfying about being the messenger of the grenade. People think they want to know. They don't. But not knowing is a different kind of rot. I chose the kind I could live with. I didn't confront Lily yet. I decided I wanted the truth in the air first, not the version she'd manufacture if I showed my hand. If I'd asked her on that Wednesday, she might have cried and edited the story that made the worst part sound like mercy. If I afforded the other women the chance to coordinate their exits, Lily would be boxed in by reality, not my narrative. I also didn't trust myself to hear her voice and not fold. You don't spend 3 years loving someone and then turn it off like a light. You make a plan and you obey it because you promise the part of you that knows when you're lying that you won't lie anymore. The plan was simple. Step 1, lock down anything with my name on it. I removed her as an authorized user on my credit card. I paused the shared Venmo and split our utilities to separate accounts. I reset the Wi-Fi because I wanted the symbolic satisfaction of ending the open secret in the air. Step 2, prepare the house. I pulled 2 suitcases from the hall closet and put them in the bedroom she used as a closet annex. Because she'd colonized it with clothes she swore she'd sell on Depop. I folded what I could and stacked it neatly and told myself I wasn't doing this because I wanted it to be easier for her. I was doing it because I wanted it to be fast. Step 3, talk to my lawyer friend and ask the practical questions about leases and engagement rings and what counted as joint property. Tom, who once handled a divorce where a couple meditated over their Yeti cooler to decide who got it, told me in his unflappable way, "You're doing it right. Keep your documentation. Don't get pulled into a fight in your own living room. Be boring. Boring wins." Amelia called again on Monday morning. "I'm sorry to involve you further," she said, "but I wanted you to know that I asked Noah to leave the house last night. I have counsel. The board of his company will find out this week." She paused. "I also wanted you to be aware he might reach out to Lily to warn her. Brace yourself." "Thank you," I said, "for the warning." "I have to ask," she said. "What do you plan to do?" "Separate finances. Ask her to leave, not set myself on fire to keep her warm." She exhaled softly, maybe a laugh, maybe a sob. "I like you," she said. "If you ever doubt yourself in the next few days, remember, none of this is your fault. Stay boring." I lasted 24 more hours. On Tuesday night, Lily came home with a box of macarons from the French place she brings when she wants to apologize for something she won't name. She put the box on the counter and opened her mouth like a person about to deliver a practice line. "Before you say whatever you rehearsed," I said, gentle but not kind, "I need you to sit down." Her mouth closed. She sat. She didn't touch the macarons. She folded her hands, which she only does when she's scared she'll wring them. "What's wrong?" she asked, eyes huge. "You're scaring me." "I found your messages," I said, "because the shortest road is straight, because our photo backups are set up to the same drive. I know about Noah, I know about Gabe, I know about Rory, and I know about Taylor." Her face did a slow-motion flicker book. Denial, indignation, calculation, fear. She settled on wounded. "Ethan," she said, breathy, "oh my God, you went through my phone?" "I didn't," I said. "Your screenshots backed up automatically, your DMs, your hotel key photos, your Uber receipts." She stared at me like the words themselves were a betrayal. "You saved them." "I did." My voice came out so steady it surprised me. "And I sent them to the women those men are lying to. Amelia, Serena, Andrea. I guess Rory's girlfriend's name. Got it close, Anna?" And she flinched anyway because the point wasn't accuracy, it was that the room had more witnesses now than she'd invited. "Ethan," she whispered, and I heard it then. The shape of the story she was building, "I can explain." "No," I said softly, "you can tell me why, but you can't explain. Explanation is for accidents." She took a breath that sounded like a sob she swallowed. I was scared. She picked that word like it was a life raft. "I love you. I do. But I'm 30 and I could feel the walls closing in. The wedding and then a baby and then 40 in a blink and you still doing stand-ups and me still begging donors to pretend to care. And then Noah. He made me feel like I wasn't ridiculous to want more. He made me feel electric. And Gabe made me feel like art. And Rory made me feel seen. And Taylor made me feel seen. And Taylor made me feel, I don't know, like I could still surprise myself." "And it made you feel what?" I asked. Not because I needed to be hurt in a fresh way, but because I needed to hear the script she'd written for me. "Safe," she said, eyes brimming, as if that word should be a prize and not a tombstone. "Right," I said, like the word had weight I'd been carrying alone. "Safe." She reached for my hand and I let her hold 2 fingers because I wanted to learn what it felt like to stop being the person who always forgives. "I was gonna stop," she said, which was the funniest joke anyone had told me in months. I had a timeline. After the gala next month, there were things in motion and "Ethan, please, we're us. We can fix this." "We're not," I said. "We were." She cried then, big real tears, and I stood there experiencing a bizarre double vision where I loved her and wanted to hold her while simultaneously witnessing the hardest part of loving someone, accepting that the person you loved also did this, and that both things are true and neither cancels the other out. "Please," she said again when I didn't move. "I'll block them, I'll change my number, I'll beg, I'll do anything." "You'll pack," I said quietly, and her face froze in a way that told me she didn't believe me until that second. "You'll pack your clothes into those 2 suitcases in the spare room. You can take whatever you want except the furniture and the appliances and the dog I don't have, because if we had a dog, this would be both easier and worse. You can take the ring if you can stand to look at it, but you're not going to pawn my grandmother's stone for someone's hotel bill. We'll work out logistics for the rest. I'm not going to scream, I'm not going to call anyone. I'm going to treat you like a person I loved who made choices I can't live with." "Ethan," she said, instantly angrier now because tears didn't buy her the thing she wanted, "you're overreacting. People, things happen. We can go to counseling. You can't just throw me out like trash." "I'm not throwing you out," I said. "I'm asking you to leave. There's a difference. Trash doesn't pack." She stood and knocked the macaron box onto the floor. It burst open and little pastel circles rolled like coins. "You're cruel," she said, voice high. "You could have just left. You didn't have to try to ruin them. You're the man who ruins other people's lives because you can't keep your girlfriend." I took a breath. Then another because Tom said boredom wins. I didn't ruin anything, I said. I connected the dots you made. She kept talking because she thought words were leverage. Noah can destroy you, she said. And there it was, the threat that proved she didn't know who I was at all. I'm a middle manager with a tidy 401 sec and a habit of paying bills early. There is nothing to destroy in me that wasn't already burned. He'll sue you, she said. He'll meet me in Discovery, I said, and the calm in my voice startled even me. And Amelia will be there, and the board, and the tab for every hotel he thought was a secret. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. It hurt that the man she finally seemed to recognize was the one who wouldn't save her. She packed in silence. The clatter of hangers was louder than it had any right to be. She used my suitcases, which felt obscene, but I let it go because I wanted to get to the other side of this day where I could sit on the couch and inhabit my body again. She took 2 framed photos from the bookshelf and left the rest, a practical cruelty I didn't appreciate until later when the empty rectangles stared back. She slid the ring off and set it on the island like she was leaving a tip. She walked to the door, paused, looked back at me as if the right angle of her face would unlock something that wasn't there. You're going to regret this, she said. Not quite bravado, not quite prophecy, more like a wish. I already regret a lot of things, I said, but not this. When the door closed behind her, I didn't cry, maybe later. I sat on the floor and picked up the crushed macarons and threw them away, and then took out the trash because I couldn't stand the smell of rose and sugar. I stood under the shower until the water turned cold. I texted Tom that she was gone. He replied with a thumbs up, which is the emoji you send a man who just chose not to light his life on fire. I turned on the TV and let a nature documentary wash pixelated color over the walls. A whale breached, a penguin fell. The narrator whispered about survival with a British accent that made everything sound manageable. At 11:40 p.m., my phone lit up with an unknown number. I sent it to voicemail. A text came through immediately. You need to stop. The number wasn't saved, but the cadence was familiar. Confident men use punctuation like bullets. Another text. You've involved my family. That's a line. I typed and deleted 3 responses, then I wrote one I could live with. Your wife was already involved. I just told her. Don't contact me again. I blocked the number. I slept for 2 hours, woke up with jaw pain from clenching, and stared at the ceiling while the city breathed under my windows. Morning brought logistics. I called the leasing office to ask about removing her name. I called the utility companies. I changed streaming passwords not because I thought she tried to use my Hulu, but because I wanted to feel the perimeter of my life again. I sent a text to a small circle of my friends that said, Lily and I have broken up. I found out she was involved with multiple people. Please don't invite me to events where she'll be present for a while. I appreciate any kindness. I received an avalanche of holy shit and anything you need. Not everyone gets that. I knew how lucky I was even while I felt like I was molting. At noon, the door intercom buzzed. I watched the lobby camera on my phone. It was Taylor, hair greasy, eyes shredded. I didn't let him in. He buzzed again, longer. I pushed the talk button. If you buzz again, I said, I'm calling the police. He turned and punched the air like he was hitting his own shadow. Later, Aaron slipped a handwritten note under my door that said, I'm sorry, thank you for telling me. I pinned it on the fridge with a pizza magnet because I wanted to see every time I open the door for milk that telling the truth is sometimes an act of care. There's a version of me, maybe the one from 6 months ago, who would have gone nuclear. He would have posted screenshots to Instagram with a long caption about betrayal. He would have texted Lily's mother. He would have messaged everyone on Lily's close friends list and said, you knew. That version of me didn't win. The one who won made a sandwich, answered work emails, and tried not to check the burner account like it was a stock ticker. That afternoon, Amelia wrote, we are separated. Thank you, Serena wrote. Booked a flight to Denver, not for him, for me, for clarity. Thank you. Andrea, yes, it turned out to be Andrea wrote, I put his stuff on the lawn. He cried. I didn't, thank you. 3 women I didn't know thanked me for lighting a fuse under my own life. Somewhere inside that mess, something like dignity grew back. 2 nights later, I got an invitation that wasn't meant for me. The nonprofit Lily worked for sent a donor email blast about their spring gala. They do a thing every year where they put community champions on stage to hold oversized checks and be applauded for existing. The email listed honorees. One was Noah. Another was a local music venue whose sound director is unbelievably Rory. The gala's theme this year, because fundraisers always need a theme, was Better Together. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone and laughed until I had to bend at the waist with my hands on my knees. I laughed because life is a hacky writer sometimes, because of course the event that built the scaffolding for Lily to cheat would be the stage where the other characters would converge. I laughed because part of me, the part I don't like, imagined the black tie audience collectively absorbing the truth like a rogue wave and gasping in the same breath. I laughed because I felt like I was being given a chance to write the ending in a bolder font. I called Tom. Hypothetically, I said, if a man wanted to make sure certain people who like to hide behind donations couldn't hide anymore, what would that man do to avoid being sued into dust? He sighed. The sigh he reserves for when I'm about to become a story he tells at barbecues to warn other men. Hypothetically, that man would not stand up at a microphone and accuse anyone of anything. That man would set a meeting with the nonprofit's executive director and their council. He would hand them a folder and say, "I don't think you want to honor this person. Here are reasons why." He would give them the chance to do the right thing for their own reputation. And if they didn't, that man would consider sending the same folder to a journalist who covers philanthropy, hypothetically. What if the man wanted to wash their faces, I said, hating the vengeful gleam in my voice and nursing it anyway. Then that man would buy a ticket, Tom said, and keep his mouth shut and bring a date. A date. To remind himself he still has a life, Tom said, softer now. To steal some of the night back. When we hung up, I looked around my apartment and tried to see it as mine. The light found the wood floors like it always has. The plant on the windowsill hadn't died from neglect after all. I opened the window and let cold air pour in. It smelled like snow and exhaust, which is Denver's perfume in March. I leaned on the sill and pictured a room full of men in tuxedos trying to clap with their hands full of secrets. I pictured Lily in a dress she couldn't afford alone. I pictured the women I'd emailed sitting somewhere else in this city with wine glasses they didn't finish because they didn't need the liquid courage anymore. I pictured my own face in the mirrored elevator doors the night of the gala, and I didn't see a man broken. I saw a man who had been given something ugly and decided to turn it into a clean line. Before I went to bed, the burner pinged one more time. It was a new message, not from Amelia or Serena or Andrea, but from an account with a name I knew, Lily. She'd created a throwaway from a new address because I'd blocked the old one. The subject line was empty. The body was a single paragraph, no greeting, no sign-off. "I loved you," it read. "I did. I just wanted to see if I could be more than what the safest version of me could be. I know that's not fair. I know I broke something in you that you might not fix, but you broke something in me too today. The part that believed you'd always pick me, even when I didn't deserve it. I don't know who that makes me now. I guess we'll find out on different timelines." I stared at it for a long time, feeling 1,000 things, many of them contradictory. Then I closed the laptop. I turned the lights off. The room glowed with city spill. I said out loud, to nobody and to myself, "Stay boring." I slept through the night for the first time in a week. The morning of the gala, I woke before my alarm, the kind of alert you get before a big exam or a road trip. I made eggs I didn't eat and brewed coffee I did. I put on a suit I'd last worn to a wedding where Lily danced with my mother under string lights and everyone told me in 100 different ways that I'd won the game. I looked at myself in the mirror and adjusted a tie I chose because Lily once said this color made my eyes look like a lake she didn't want to leave. I didn't have a date because what Tom suggested required a kind of optimism I couldn't fake. I put two things in my jacket pocket, a folded letter on nonprofit letterhead from the executive director that said, "Thank you for bringing these concerns to our attention," and a small flash drive that contained everything I hoped I wouldn't have to use. I arrived early because I'm always early, because being on time feels like an apology to the universe for all the things I can't control. The lobby was already buzzing with check coats and told jokes. I recognized the young staffers by their clipboards and harried competence. I recognized board members by the way other people recognized them. I stood at the edge of the crowd like a man in a museum looking for the painting that would make sense of the whole exhibit. I saw Noah first. You can spot founders the way you can spot wedding photographers. They move like gravity's opinion. He was taller than I expected, smile brighter, suit more expensive. If I hadn't seen his text thread at midnight, I might have admired the machinery of him. He shook hands with 5 people in 1 second without pretending he remembered their names. A woman in a dress that could have paid my mortgage walked up to him and he bent to kiss her cheek in the exact wrong place that makes a photograph look intimate. His eyes passed over me without sticking. Then I saw Lily. Her dress was emerald because she always knew what colors did to a room. Her hair was a waterfall. She wore the face she wears on event nights, alert, earnestly interested, the expression of a woman who loves making things happen. She pivoted between tables, introduced donors to donors, laughed the exact right amount. She didn't look broken. She looked like someone whose disaster is organized enough to pass inspection. She caught sight of me and stuttered barely, the way a dancer might miss a beat and then make it look like a new move. She didn't come over, she couldn't. But when her eyes left me, they went somewhere I recognize now, somewhere up and to the right. It's where we look when we're memorizing a story we'll tell later. They called everyone into the ballroom. Round tables, centerpieces the size of hedgehogs, wine glasses that would clink in 30 minutes when the auction started. I took my seat in the last row near the doors like a man who prefers exits that open. The EDN, elegant woman who can wrangle egos with a smile, took the stage. She thanked sponsors, she nodded at the theme. She introduced honorees. She paused when she got to Noah, and for a heartbeat I knew, because I'd seen the letter in my pocket and because I saw the way her jaw set, that she was about to choose something harder than money. "On our program," she said, voice warm and precise, "you'll see several names listed. We're grateful to everyone who supports our work. We also take seriously the responsibility to uphold values we ask our community to share. In light of information brought to us this week and after careful consideration, one honoree has been removed from tonight's program. We won't be naming that individual out of respect for all families involved." There's a rustle a crowd makes when it collectively receives gossip it didn't have to go searching for. It sounds like fabric and small gasps and heads turning. Noah kept his face still in a way that told me the inside of his skull was loud. Lily, at the edge of the stage, didn't move. She might have been carved from her best good intentions. I sat there and held my own hands together under the table because otherwise they might have done something stupid like applaud. Rory's venue was still honored because institutions are slower to pivot than individuals, and he kept his head down and got his plaques like a man who thinks if he doesn't look up, no one can see him. I watched him walk to the stage and wondered if Andrea was at home in Fort Collins scrolling through the tagged photos and thinking, I hope he trips. Gabe wasn't there because he's coastal, and this is flyover unless you're kissing someone on a balcony. Taylor wasn't there because his life now fits inside the trunk of a car and he has to park 2 blocks away to sleep. I stayed through the auction because I wanted to see how far the ripples traveled. The ED spoke about kids and programs and hope because she always does. People raised paddles. Money moved with grace it doesn't usually have. When it was over, I stood in the space between applause and scraping chairs and I let the noise pass through me. I didn't talk to Lily. I didn't talk to Noah. I walked to the lobby, took my coat from a teenager with gelled hair and stepped out into the cold. The night air bit my face and felt honest. On the sidewalk, my phone vibrated. It was a text from an unknown number, but the words were familiar. You think you've won, it said. You haven't. I typed, I didn't enter. Then I put my phone in my pocket and walked to my car under a sky that didn't care, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't care that it didn't. The next morning, there were consequences I hadn't planned for. My boss called to ask if I was okay because he'd heard through an alumnus that there had been drama at the gala. I said, I'm fine, and he said, you don't sound fine. And I said, unfunctional, which in corporate speak means I will do my job while bleeding in the bathroom during lunch. He told me to take the day. I didn't. I needed the structure of JIRA tickets and stand-ups and the particular relief of talking about problems that have story points and acceptance criteria. At noon, the building manager texted the tenant group thread about heightened tension and respectful conduct, and we will not tolerate harassment at the intercom. I muted the thread because seeing Taylor's reply, something about psycho neighbor, wouldn't make my day better. I made a sandwich again because now apparently that's what I do when I don't know what to do. At 3, Amelia called. There was a different tone in her voice relief, like she'd set down a rock she'd carried since Spencer was born with his father's eyes. It's done, she said. I have the house. He has the condo he bought before we were married. The board asked him to take a leave. I don't expect you to care about that part, but I thought you'd want to know your efforts weren't wasted. They weren't mine alone, I said. She hesitated. Listen, she said, I'm not going to tell you what to do about Lily. I don't owe her kindness, and I don't think you owe her anything either. But if you decide to send her anything, final words or an invoice for the emotional labor, she tried a small laugh and failed. Don't send it when you're hungry or tired or lonely. Send it if you ever feel clean and mean. Otherwise, take a walk. We hung up and I took a walk because I was all 3, hungry, tired, lonely. The park was full of dogs whose joy isn't performative. I watched a woman in a red coat throw a ball for a terrier who kept grunting with effort, and I realized I hadn't truly noticed something delightful in weeks. I stood there, a man in a heavy coat with a phone in his pocket he refused to pull out and let a small thing be big. When I got back to the building, there was a package at my door. No return address, just my name in Lily's handwriting that I would know if you made me identify it in a lineup while blindfolded. I carried it inside and set it on the table and stared at it like a snake. I opened it with the caution of a person defusing a bomb. Inside was the ring box. Inside the ring box was the ring. There was also a note on lined paper that said, I don't want to wear a story I don't deserve. L. I sat down hard, the stupid little black box on the table between my hands like a paperweight holding down the last sheet of a chapter. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt hollowed out again because closure isn't always painless. Sometimes it's just clean. I put the ring in the safe because I didn't know what else to do with an object that cost as much as a used car and held less sentimental value than my battered kettle. That night, I slept because my body insisted. In the morning, I woke with an idea I couldn't shake. There's a difference between revenge and accountability. I'd spent a week wading through both, and I wanted to end on the side that would let me look at myself later without wincing. There were still loose ends. There were still men who thought they could outrun the truth. There were still organizations that would keep taking checks as long as the memo line said, for the children. I opened my laptop. I wrote a letter to the venue that employed Rory as a sound engineer, not accusing, just stating facts. Your employee, Rory last name, is currently being honored as a community partners by nonprofit. On dates, he used his position to conduct an ongoing affair during work hours with my then fiancée. This information may be relevant to your HR policies. I attached nothing. I suggested nothing. I sent it because the part of me that wanted to be done needed to finish the row of dominoes I'd started. I wrote to a local journalist who covers philanthropy, not giving salacious details, simply saying, there's a story here about how often the words better togethers hide the truth that some people are allowed to be better at the expense of others. I didn't expect a response. Sometimes you throw a message in a bottle because you need to see it float away. At noon, Serena sent a photo of a bagel with the caption, Denver bagels are a hate crime. I laughed out loud and realized my mouth hadn't made that shape naturally in days. She wrote, I'm not here for Gabe. I'm here to see Red Rocks in the daytime because I've only ever seen it at night. Want to come? I almost said no on principle because my life felt like a house with police tape around it. Instead, I wrote, yes, we walked a red path under a blue sky and talked like two people who have been told by recent events that they are not as smart as they thought. We didn't flirt, we didn't perform. At the top of the stairs, we breathed hard and looked out at a city that hadn't moved an inch while ours fell apart. Thank you for telling me, she said again, and I believed her because the words sounded like a new page. On the drive back, my phone buzzed with 3 messages in a row from unknown numbers. I didn't check them until I got home. The first was from an HR manager at the venue. We take these matters seriously. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. The second was from a reporter. I'd like to talk. Your perspective is valuable. Off the record until you say otherwise. The third was from a number I didn't recognize, but a cadence I did. You think you're a hero. You're just bitter. I blocked it without replying. Bitter is what people call you when you refuse to give them the ending they want. Night came on slow. I cooked because cooking is a way to invite order back into a room. I ate at the bar because sitting at the dining table still felt like a performance of a life that needed 2 chairs. I washed the dishes and wiped the counter and stood there looking at the clean line of the marble and thought, I could end it here. I could call it good. I told the people who needed to know. I'd move the pieces I could move without turning into someone I didn't recognize. I kept my promise to the part of me that insists on clean lines. I could let the second act arrive without me clawing for it. My phone rang. Unknown number with a local area code. I thought about letting it go to voicemail. I answered on the third ring because I'm still a person who believes in the possibility that the next thing could be better. Ethan? A man's voice said, steady, older. Yes? This is Mark Reynolds, he said. The name didn't ring a bell. I'm on the board at Nonprofit. I wanted to thank you for how you handled the situation. I didn't speak for a beat because the only ending I'd imagined was private. You don't need to thank me. I do, he said. You gave us a chance to do the right thing without a spectacle. We almost never get that. We usually get blindsided in the press. I considered that, I admitted. We know, he said. Our ED said you came in with a folder and left without asking for anything. That's rare. He paused. If you ever feel like you've lost faith in all of us, don't. Most of us are just trying not to drown in the optics. Try harder, I said, and he laughed because he knows he should. We hung up. I put the phone down and looked at the ceiling and felt a peace I didn't expect. Not victory, not even closure. Something like alignment. My actions matched my values. It was new enough to feel like a language I was just learning. There are stories where the first half ends in a door slamming or a car crash or a shouted confession in a room full of witnesses. Mine ended with dishes drying in a rack and a man standing at his own kitchen thinking about the next morning. I knew what the second half would bring. The texts and the confrontations and the way people who'd been oblivious would line up to tell me what they always suspected. The fallout at work for the men who thought their charisma immunized them. The sharp-edged apologies, the legal letters with language so careful it sounded like fog. I knew there would be an evening where I'd see Lily in a grocery store aisle in the yogurt section, and we'd both stop and look at each other, and all our ghosts would crowd the produce. I knew there would be a day when my phone would finally stop buzzing and I'd look up and realize I'd lived an entire hour without thinking about whether I'd been enough. For now, I made tea. I sat at the table, I watched the steam write a brief message that said only, keep going. I opened my laptop and wrote a short note to myself titled, Rules for the rest of this. It said, don't make a mess when what you want is order. Don't mistake quiet for weakness. Don't negotiate with anyone who benefits from your confusion. Tell the truth once, twice if they weren't listening. Don't forget breakfast. Don't forget breakfast. I don't know if that makes me a man who overthinks or a man who saved himself by treating his heart like a product with a roadmap. I just know that when I put the note on my desktop and closed the lid, I felt like a person again. Not a hero, not a victim, not a cautionary tale or a sermon, just a man in an apartment with clean counters and a future that hadn't yet decided to be cruel. In the days that followed, the story I set in motion kept moving without me. I heard things because cities are small and nonprofits smaller. I heard Noah was taking time to focus on family, which is how men like that say, I got caught. I heard Gabe posted a black square with a white caption about respecting women and then turned off comments. I heard Rory switch venues. I heard Taylor moved out at night and left his keys in the mailbox with a note on printer paper that said, sorry. I heard Lily left the nonprofit to pursue other opportunities. I heard everything and tried to hold none of it because it's a trick to carry what you can't change. On a Thursday 2 weeks after the gala, I got an email from the reporter with 2 short questions. Do you regret how you did it? And what did it cost you? I stared at the blinking cursor and tried to resist the urge to write a manifesto. Then I wrote 2 answers I could stand behind. No, I typed. I regret that any of it was necessary, but not how I handled it, and less than it would have cost to do nothing. I hit send, I closed my eyes, I listened to the city. Somewhere a siren wailed and faded, somewhere a couple fought in a kitchen like mine, somewhere a woman who looks like Lily checked a mirror before walking into a room that would love her until it didn't. Somewhere a man like me took a breath and decided to stay boring and discovered that boredom can be a sanctuary if you build it yourself. I don't know what comes next, except that I won't be the man waiting around to find out whether someone chooses me this time. I'll be the man who chooses, even if all I choose tonight is to make oatmeal in the morning and run the good route that climbs the hill before letting me fly down it. The hill is the part that hurts, the flying is the part you earn. I woke up the next morning with that strange mix of emptiness and relief, the kind of hangover you get from burning your own illusions instead of alcohol. The apartment smelled clean, quiet, mine again. I had expected the silence to weigh heavy, but instead it stretched like fresh sheets, empty, yes, but ready to be filled with something new. I didn't hear from Lily for weeks. Then, one night, I saw her name flash across the lobby camera. She stood there with a paper bag in her hands, looking up at the lens like it was a confessional window. I didn't buzz her in. She slid the bag under the glass doors and left. When I went down later, it was full of things I hadn't realized were missing. A t-shirt I'd been looking for, the novel I was halfway through, a photo frame with us at Red Rocks. No note, just a little pile of leftovers she couldn't carry anymore. Life moved on without me holding it. Noah's company put out a press release full of vague phrases about transition. Rory disappeared from the local music scene, replaced by someone younger who probably didn't know how close he'd come to being next. Gabe's Instagram was scrubbed of Serena, and Serena herself DM'd me one night a picture of her hiking boots in Moab with the caption, "He was never worth it." Taylor became a ghost in the building. Erin thrived, suddenly brighter when I passed her in the lobby. We nodded in solidarity, survivors in neighboring trenches. As for Lily, she faded. She left the nonprofit, dropped off most social media, and moved into a smaller apartment on the other side of town. A mutual friend said she was reevaluating her priorities. I didn't ask for details, I didn't need them. For once, her story wasn't mine to manage. The strangest part was the quiet joy that returned in increments. I started running again, the long route that climbs the ridge above Sloan's Lake. The first time I made it to the top without stopping, I stood there looking at the waterlit gold with sunrise, lungs burning, and thought, this is mine. I invited friends over without worrying if she'd roll her eyes at them. I bought a new couch, picked the color because I liked it, not because it matched the Pinterest board. The apartment stopped feeling like the scene of a crime and started feeling like the headquarters of someone who survived. Months later, I did see Lily again, in the most mundane way possible. Grocery store, aisle 7, both reaching for the same carton of eggs. She froze, I froze. For a moment, 3 years of shared history pressed between us like glass. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I just nodded once, polite, neutral, and walked on. My heart didn't race, my hands didn't shake. That, more than any confrontation, felt like victory. I started dating again, slowly, cautiously, but differently. No rush, no fantasy, just learning the quiet miracle of building something honest. Serena, the New York girlfriend of Gabe, visited Denver once more and we grabbed coffee, not as conspirators, but as two people who'd been burned and somehow found humor in the ashes. We laughed, and it didn't feel like revenge anymore. It felt like healing. The truth? I didn't destroy anyone. They destroyed themselves, each in their own way. All I did was hold up the mirror and let them see. Lily wanted to be everything to everyone. In the end, she was nothing to herself. I don't know if karma is real, but consequences are. And sometimes the cleanest revenge is no revenge at all, just refusing to carry someone else's chaos any longer. So here I am, months later, sitting at the same kitchen table where it all started, coffee half drunk, sunlight slanting in. The world didn't end when she left, it began again. Sometimes the greatest justice isn't a grand gesture or a public scene. Sometimes it's simply living better, freer, while the people who betrayed you are left to drown in the weight of their own choices. And that's exactly what I did. What do you think about this story? Was I right to cut her off completely, or should I have given her another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more crazy stories like this one.